Opportunity to contribute to this debate, and I want to echo the words of my majority leader, my deputy majority leader, that the report is good from National Cohesion and Equity Committee, but it's not comprehensive, Mr. Speaker, because on the same angle, they're supposed to offer solutions and the way to move forward. Because even if you say one ethnic community is holding 70% of the jobs, you must also be able to, to describe or to calculate and say what is their percentage in terms of the population. Because you cannot give the same equal opportunity with a community that is holding 0.001% of the population and compare it with a community that is holding almost 40 or 30% of the population, Mr. Speaker. So therefore, that report is not comprehensive, Mr. Speaker. When you say that 17% of the community, or one community, and you don't substantiate, and say probably this community is holding this and this position, or they were employed between 1965 to 1980, or they were employed the other 2 days ago or 2 years ago, it's not weighty, Mr. Speaker, and therefore we cannot be able to pass such a report, because that's why I want also to believe, even if my member of parliament, my colleague, is saying that there is not even a single member to support from the committee to support the report, but maybe probably that's why we were not even sure that whether the chairman, that is the chairman's report, or is the committee report, Mr. Speaker, because it seems like chairman has also left, Mr. Speaker.
For the avoidance of doubt, the chairman is behind the consultation room here.
Exactly, Mr. Speaker. That's
and
why
is a very courteous chair. He informed me he was going behind here. You know the chair is a Muslim. A time comes when they need to pray. So it's just behind you here. Don't worry.
I want to agree with you, Mr. Speaker, but lack of members supporting, being in the House to support the report, it seems that something is missing in that report, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I want to tell the chair, even if you want us to pass the report as it is, there is a lot of things that are missing in that report, and I would suggest it's a good report, Mr. Speaker. It is talking about, promoting unity of this republic and of this country. And I would want to support, because sometimes, and I appreciate Komboka, now we are having what you call a broad-based government. Before you were still in opposition, but now you talk like someone who is in government. And we appreciate for that. But also you need to understand the genesis of this government, because as you're saying, as we continue fighting for equity in terms of distribution of resources, which I totally agree with you, but we must also understand where this government came from, Mr. Bwana Wamboka, and also understand the population that covers the communities that cover to almost 30 or 40%. So therefore, you cannot equate a community that is holding 1% of the population with a community that is holding 40%, Mr. Speaker. And I start to be guided if in any case we're gonna push an agenda of making sure that there is a representation of our community, it must also comes into terms with the percentage of each and every population. Because a population that is about 6 million, 7 million, definitely it will have a bigger share of the. It must. I agree. It must commensurate with the percentage of the population. The issue that the chairman has talked about.
Deputy Majority Whip, what is out of order?
I don't want to disturb my good friend, our Mheshimiwa, but is he in order to keep talking about shares when he knows very well that that word has costed somebody a huge thing? Is he in order? And I must also say that if he continues that way, we will think about him. We will impeach him.
Honorable Kawanjiku, when you are talking about those ethnic percentages, yes, are you talking about them in relation to the national ethnic proportions, yes, or in relation to the manner in which communities voted in the last election?
No. I'm talking in terms of what you have said, Mr. Speaker. National ethnic population.
That one you're right.
Yes, I'm talking in terms of that, because if the community is big, we expect that at the end of the day they're gonna have, a larger share of the national cake because of their population, in terms of the employment opportunities, Mr. Speaker. I also want to concur with the chair, especially on making sure that there is a certain percentage of the young people who are getting employed in by the Public Service Commission. You understand sometimes it becomes a bit difficult with our young people, whereby you are told that for you to be able to get a certain position, you need to produce an experience of 10 years or 15 years. How can a young person get an experience of 15 years and we're expecting them to perform better? We must concur and make sure that we come up with better laws, as the chair has said, to make sure that we create those opportunities deliberately, to make sure that there is equal positions in terms of the women who are getting this employment, in terms of the young people who are getting this employment, and maybe we put to task Public Service Commission to be producing a report every single year. How many jobs have been created for the young people? How many jobs have been created for the majority, not for the women? And also make sure that at the end of the day, we put a capping in terms of the employment of the old people. Because sometimes you realize, it's like we are moving backward instead of going forward, Mr. Speaker. Someone who is 65 years or 70 years is the same getting appointment of boards, chairman of a certain parastatal, and we have very young and energetic and able young Kenyan, Mr. Speaker. We must be deliberate to create employment and opportunities for our young people, Mr. Speaker. And as we move forward, and I will propose to the chair next time, because there is also a part of I can't remember the article, Mr. Speaker, but I know there is a certain percentage of employment for the local people. It may not be 70, but about 30%. If you come to the counties, especially like in Kiambu, or probably in Nairobi, or probably a company that is based in Coast Province, the 30% of the employment should be able to go to the local people, Mr. Speaker, because at the end of the day, they are provided the infrastructure, they have provided area for that company to be working around that area. So asking for 30% and making sure that they get their 30% is nothing much to us, Mr. Speaker. Even if we want to be national, we must also be, in a way, able to protect the local interest. And politics is all about local interest, Mr. Speaker. So if you are not able to take care of your local interest, even getting an opportunity to come to the National Assembly will become a disaster. So we must protect the local interest, make sure as we bring people to work from other regions, as we bring people to work, if, for example, like Kabibi, he's calling it Kabibi University or Coastal Water Development, Kebabi University. There is a certain percentage for the local people, because there is no way you will get someone from Kiambu County to go and start working like a sweeper, or maybe someone who takes, or a secretary. There are jobs that are meant for the local people. So the only thing we need to define is that what is the 30% that is meant for the local people? Is it in terms of the top management team? Is it the middle management team, or the lower or the subordinate staff, Mr. Speaker? We must create that content, and we tell the chair to continue to go back again and do a due diligence in terms of that report, and make sure that there is representation, that is pure or proper representation of that report. And when they are telling us that one community is holding 17%, or it is having it should not hold 1.7% of the total employment, they should also be able to tell us what is the percentage of that population in our republic. I support, Mr. Speaker.
The minority whip will take a due place in precedence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I wish to support the report, but I will actually be commenting on some areas that I think the committee could have done better. Mr. Speaker, I grew up in a very small but fairly cosmopolitan town. Mr. Speaker, the town I grew in had majority of Luos, but also a very sizable number of Kisis, Luyas, Subas, Kurias, Kikuyus, Kambas, Somalis, Arabs, whites, and mixed races. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, I was discovering that the current CS for education went to the same primary school with me. I didn't even know, because we were so diverse that sometimes you don't even know who is there. After the death of General Ogola is when I discovered he was my neighbor in Homa Bay. It was a very small town, but fairly cosmopolitan. And Mr. Speaker, I'm very grateful because
Minority
of...
Whip, why don't you just say it is Homa Bay Primary in my
Yes, in Homa Bay Primary School. And Mr. Speaker, I want to say that because of that, I am very grateful, because I do not suffer some very limited ethnic thoughts, inferiority complex, because I've grown up with very diverse people. I could as well have grown up in the city. Mr. Speaker, I know you identify, I don't know, but TJ went also with me in the same school. There are a number of people here went with me in the same school. And yes, it was a serious school. It has very, very senior and serious people in this country. And Mr. Speaker, because of that, I consider myself really a Kenyan. Yes, I'm very ethnically liberated. I celebrate my ethnicity as a Luo, half Suba, married to Andevele. I celebrate that with a daughter who is Botswanan. So I'm actually global. I really don't have, I'm not limited in many ways. Mr. Speaker, I've also worked a lot in the human rights sector. And because I've worked a lot in the human rights sector, I am an expert on issues of equality and equity. Mr. Speaker, not only am I honored to have been one of the founders of the founding fathers and mothers of the Constitution, but I am also a founder of the National Cohesion and Integration Act. When Honorable Martha Karua brought this piece of legislation in the House, and we had just come from a period where we lost over 1,200 Kenyans to ethnic clashes, I remember even the title or the name that was given had something to do with ethnicity. I brought an amendment even to the title. And I remember recently when Honorable Duale attended my launch, he was actually saying that Millie can amend including the title. And he thought it was, in his word, I'm glad he actually said Millie can be very cantankerous. And for people who don't understand me, sometimes I look like I'm actually just bringing amendments for the sake. I mainstream certain issues in bills. In fact, in this parliament, I don't think I've done as well as others. In past parliaments, no bill would pass me because I mainstream issues of human rights, gender, equity, equality, which therefore means you will see me talking to issues of youth, issues of women, issues of children, issues of minorities, issues of marginalized, and issues of older persons. And also issues of persons affected by HIV and AIDS for a long time. Because now we have different groups that have come in, I've kind of stepped down a little because the women reps and others who are nominated speak a lot to those issues. Mr. Speaker, I just want to clarify to the committee that when the original bill came, it didn't have 1/3. I am the one who proposed amendment to increase 1/3. And the idea is that we understand Kikuyus are the most populous. But can you imagine if you went into an office where 100% are Kikuyus? It doesn't reflect the nation. It actually doesn't reflect the spirit of the Constitution that says that in our appointment it should reflect the face of Kenya. In fact, it doesn't just talk of the face. It talks about face and ethnic representation of the country. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want Honorable Baya to listen to this. That when you say that because of the local community, they should at least be the majority, that is true. 70% is actually a majority. When it goes beyond 70%, it is wrong. Our communities, even if it is a coastal community or a Homa Bay-based institution, 70% can be your locals. 30% should be people from other communities. That is when we develop even our children as truly global and Kenyan communities. Right now, because of devolution, it's unfortunate. I can go to counties where I'll speak one language. And I don't know why counties think they are exempt. They are not exempt. Even counties must follow this 1/3 rule. The only deviation or whatever we allow is if there is work, I think it is actually in the law, that if the nature of work requires such that it may go beyond, then it's understandable. Because we don't expect people to slash grass, the people slashing grass in Kiambu to come from Suba North. It is not possible. So maybe there may be deviations around that. But on the whole, if they are professional jobs, there must be diversity. Otherwise, why are we called Kenyan? Why don't we form different, countries, Homa Bay country, Kiambu country, not counties? Then we should be countries. Mr. Speaker, one of the things that I also wanted to talk about is that I've had the Honorable Chair, when he's moving this amendment, he has lumped this report, he has lumped certain communities. If you actually look at the Constitution, we were very clear that we name communities by tribe. And for the first time, we have Subas as a community. Mr. Speaker, everybody knows me as a Luo. Yes, I am a Luo because my mother is a Luo. But my father is Suba. Suba is a Bantu community. Yes. And if I actually spoke Suba here, the people who are likely to understand me are the Kikuyus and Kisis and Luyas and Taitas. The Luos will not understand me. However, especially Maragolis, I've had situations when people come to my constituency, especially in Fangano Island, where Suba is still very well spoken, people will not understand. But because we don't want our smaller communities to be extinct, that's why we have acknowledged them as such. When you are doing this report, and I hope Chair can listen, when you are doing this report, do not say the Luos and include Subas as part of the Luos. Identify the Luos, what they have, and identify the Subas, what they have. And when you are doing the coastal region, don't tell me Mijikenda. Tell us who within the Mijikenda is constituted in that group. Because then that is also a way of marginalizing smaller communities further. And then I also heard you using a word that the Mijikenda were the majority. Majority is not a figure. There's nothing wrong with communities being majority in their locality, so long as they're up to 70%. So if they are majority at 70% by law, that is okay. So don't use the words majority, give us figures. And we need to hold institutions accountable because we need an inclusive country. The Gen Zs have told us we are tribeless, but we are leaderless here. But they've told us we are tribeless. And now I wish that we don't contaminate the Gen Zs, because we need a country where your tribe should be important just as much as mine is important. Mr. Speaker, this is an issue that I'm so passionate about. Unfortunately, because of time, I can see I am limited, but I just want to say that you need to be giving this report regularly for purposes of cohesion. And that's why I changed the name, amended the name to National Cohesion and Integration. It's supposed to bring cohesion and integration, because resources, people fight over resources, but when we divide them equally, then we become united. Thank you.
The Honorable Kuria Kimani.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Picking from where the Honorable Millie Odhiambo has left, I was looking at an institution where majority is up to 70%. But the law requires that you don't go beyond 70%. And I was asking myself, how objectively then do you balance the remaining 30%? And I was drawn to a few research done in the academic world about the balancing of meritocracy and diversity, and how that reflects in our governance. Honorable Speaker, John Rawls, in the theory of justice, says that a fair justice is where positions of authority are open to all and where merit-based rewards do not compromise equality. So this scholar talks about merit-based appointments. So what does that mean? That if you conducted an interview process and there were 15 people in that interview process, and you need 10, and 10 of them belong to one ethnic community, then this, if you would follow that theory, that would mean you'll give the 10 irrespective of their ethnic community, even when they came from one region or ethnic community. But go further to the one person we refer to as the father of governance, one Professor Marion King, who talks about inclusive governance, corporate social responsibility, and stakeholder diversity are crucial in good governance. He says that diversity brings broader perspective to decision-making and aligning the concept, therefore, of Ubuntu, what you call human interconnectedness. And therefore, we have now research that shows, even though if you are to follow merit-based appointment, then you will take the most merited people, then the research to show that if you endeavored to go further and try to ensure that you have a diversified workforce, that diversified workforce increases inclusivity, corporate social responsibility, and efficiency and effectiveness in that organization. One Robert Mass, in a critical mass theory, says that corporate boards that governance structures become more effective and innovative.
Apologies to the Chair of Finance. Please take your seat. That is the standing order. Chair, my apologies. I've had him repeat a mistake that I'm actually the one who's misled him, which I want to correct. It's no more than 30% should be of the same community. It's my apologies. I'm actually the one who gave the wrong figure. It's no more than 30%.
Thank you for the correction.
Thank you. So no more than 30%. But the argument still surfaces that even if you have not up to 30%, then what happens when when you have more than 30% of people from a same community qualified for that position, and the rest do not meet the merit for that particular position? And that's why I was saying the tricky balance between balancing meritocracy and diversity. So we were at the father of corporate governance called Marvin King. No, we're talking about now critical mass theory, but by Elizabeth Mass. Was talking about that corporate boards that govern structures become more effective and innovative when they are diverse enough to allow for a varied perspective. So, therefore, this shows that there is merit in ensuring deliberate action on diversity in our workforce. That even though research has shown that merit is what drives an institution, but there is merit in making sure that there is diversity in that workforce, and that brings us to a more effective organization. Meritocracy, Honorable Speaker,